Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have our first interview for 2023.
Oh,
So,
I didn't know.
just want to welcome Jane Jesmond. Hi, Jane.
I.
So, a little bit about Jane. Jane writes crime thriller and mysteries. Her debut novel, On the Edge, was the first in a series featuring dynamic daredevil protagonist Jen Shaw, was a Sunday Times crime fiction best book, and the second in the series, Cut Adrift, will be published in February this year. Although born and brought up in the UK, Jane has spent her last 30 years living and working in France with her cat, I think I said, yep, her cat and her husband. Although she loves writing and reading thrillers and mysteries, her real life is very quiet and unexciting. Dead bodies and dangerous exploits are not a feature. She lives by the sea and enjoys coastal walks and village life. And unlike her daredevil protagonist, she's terrified of heights. So thanks, Jane, for joining me. Just wondering if you want to start off by telling us a little bit about On the Edge.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. As you said, it's a thriller. Here it is. I'm not very good at
Oh
maneuvering
yeah,
this.
there it
And
is.
it was my debut novel. And I don't want to give any spoilers away. So I'll just start by talking about the opening. It starts in winter at night in a storm, one of the storms that roll in over the Atlantic regularly and batter the coast of Cornwall, where it's set. But this storm also batters a figure, unconscious and dreaming, that's hanging from a lighthouse in the middle of the storm. And the figure is a young woman who's called Jen Shaw, who's my main protagonist. And she is a passionate and very, very skillful climber, but also a bit of an adrenaline junkie and risk taker. However, somebody very close to her got badly hurt during one of her escapades, so she gave climbing up. And instead, she threw herself into a somewhat wild partying life in London. But despite the whole adrenaline junkie bit, there is a streak of common sense and determination in Jen. So she dragged herself out of that and booked herself into rehab. When a call for help from her brother, sent her back to her childhood home in Cornwall. She got there, she checked into a hotel, and the next thing she knew, she's hanging off this lighthouse in the middle of a storm with absolutely no idea how she got there and no memory of anything that's happened in between. And so obviously the large part of the book is about her finding out what actually happened on that night. And I think that's probably about all I can tell you.
No,
I hope that's enough.
That's a great summary. And can you tell us, have you always wanted to be a writer, and how did you go about getting this first book published?
I have always been one of those people who thought they could write, and I've written the odd bit and piece over the years. But it wasn't really until about 9 years ago, I would say, that I started writing seriously. Children left home, we semi-retired, and I just thought, oh, it's now or never, really. But I have to say, sometimes I think that if I'd known how long it would take to actually learn the craft, I might well have given up right at the very beginning. Because like everybody, I've submitted on and off probably for the last 5 years.
Okay.
And it's tough, but I'm sure you've heard that from a lot of other writers before. It's surprising how much there actually is to learn.
But
really
what
is.
kept you going?
I love writing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that before too. It's really funny. I sat down and I wrote a book, And about halfway through, I thought, oh, this is just great. This is just great. And so then you write another one, and you get into the habit, and there's just something about it that's completely enthralling.
And we've got a few people watching, so just reminding people watching, if you've got any questions for Jane, please type them and I can read them out. Kelly says it's a great title, and she wonders if you chose it.
I did. I know it's often, I'm sure, I don't know if your readers are aware, but the title and the cover of a book are often are not up to the writer. It's the publisher who has the final say on them. But in this particular instance, no, On the Edge, in fact, has been pretty much the title of the book from the word go, which is often not the case for me. I often change it, frequently as I try and find the right one. Good question, though. Good question.
And Kelly also wonders if you're a daredevil at all, like your character.
No, not at all. Not at all, Kelly. I'm absolutely terrified of heights. I am strictly no more than 2 steps up the step ladder before I start to feel sick. I think actually that's possibly got something to do with why I wanted to write about Jen, because although I really am very, very frightened of heights, but they've got a sort of fascination for me, and just the thought of somebody not having that fear, and in fact actually enjoying the feeling of being hundreds of feet up in the air with only a thin rope holding her there. Anyway, I found it very interesting to find out about people like that.
And what gave you your idea to write about this book and and have a series and that? What was the first idea you had?
Well, I live in France, in Brittany, right by the coast, and it's a very, very dangerous piece of coast with lots of rocks offshore. We've got lots of famous wrecks that took place not far from here, and so obviously the whole coast is littered with lighthouses, and there's a particularly magnificent one not very far from where I live called St. Matthew's. Well, it's in French, but in English it's St. Matthew's Lighthouse. And I was just driving past there one night, not in the middle of a storm, but in the middle, and I just watched the lighthouse beam going round and round and round, and it's such an iconic sight. And the idea then suddenly came to me, somebody hanging from the lighthouse, and I just took that idea really, and Jen was the sort of natural person to be hanging from the lighthouse, and then and the rest of the book developed from that. But there's lots of ideas from lots of places. Obviously, a lot of the book is my family come from Cornwall. My mother was brought up there, and my grandparents lived there, and we spent a lot of time there as children. And so there's the whole kind of Cornish myth of smugglers and things like that also informed the book, and that I wanted to write about. I love Cornwall. I hope that's clear from the book, although it's quite a dreary Cornwall in some ways. That's there. It's not summer Cornwall.
No. And Sharon wonders what you like to read, and I wonder if there might be something you've read lately you want to recommend to us.
Okay, well, I love reading. I've always have, right from when I was a child, and I was lucky enough to spend a large chunk of my childhood and adolescence actually living opposite our local library. So that was fantastic. It gave me the opportunity to read a lot of books that I think maybe I might not necessarily have read. So I'm a bit of an advocate for libraries. And so obviously I do love reading crime and thrillers and so on, but I'll read almost anything. I like my books to have a good story and to have interesting characters. But I love historical fiction and crime fiction, women's fiction, just anything. It's just got to have a good story and grab me. Recently, what have I read recently? Probably Lessons in Chemistry.
Oh yes,
Bonnie,
yeah,
oh,
that was a
I
good one.
love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic book. That was probably my best book of last year that I read, I would say. More recently, I've read, there's a book called Fear and Lovely. You possibly won't have heard of it. It's only just come out. It's by a lady called Anjana Apachana, and she's obviously of Indian origin. The book is set in New Delhi. But that was fantastic. I read the last chapter really slowly because I didn't want it to end. And it's one of those books where that you just feel as though you know the characters. You feel as though you know the characters. You feel as though you've actually lived in New Delhi yourself, and the stories. I can't recommend that enough. On the sort of crime and thriller front, I'm currently reading Kate Evans' series. The first one is A Wake of Crows, and I'm on the second one now, just started it, which is Drowning, Not Waving. I hope I've got that right. But they're really great. They're classic police procedurals. But
okay. Yeah.
They're set in Scarborough in England, but they've got a great main character. Yeah, really good. I could probably go on.
Yeah, no, we love getting recommendations, so that's great. And can you tell us what sort of research did you do for On the Edge?
Well, obviously huge amounts of climbing research, both reading books written by climbers just to get a sort of feel for the kind of people, for the things they're interested in, the way they talk and stuff like that. I spent an awful lot of time looking at how to climb videos on YouTube.
Okay, yeah.
And trying to, I'd go out in the garden and try and imagine, what it was actually like. And actually, there's quite a lot of YouTube stuff of climbers actually talking, which sometimes is more helpful than just reading about them. But lots, and a big range of stuff from the sort of philosophy of it right down to the nuts and bolts of how you actually hold on to bits of rock and how you get your balance and that sort of. I love the research side of it though. Sometimes I find I've sort of stopped writing because I've got so interested in pursuing. It's good.
Yeah. Is there anything you could share with us that you found when you were researching that might have really surprised you?
I was quite surprised by how technical climbing was, but that's because I'm coming from a position of complete ignorance. I think I'm gonna forget people's names, which is really terrible. I've got terrible memory for names, but a couple of the I was really interested in listening to the climbers talk about free climbing, free solo climbing, I should say, which is where you are absolutely without a rope at all. And so if you make a mistake, if you fall, that's it, curtains. And they're very interesting talking about that and talking about fear. I mean that doesn't really come into my book, but it all of that surprised me. But I do think when you start researching anything you don't know anything about, it's fascinating what comes across.
Yeah. And when you first started writing, did you know that it was going to become a series?
No, I didn't. And it wasn't really until I got to the very end and I thought, oh, okay, actually, there's more I can write about Jen and about the other characters. Having said that, it's not going to be a 10, 20 book series. As you said, number 2 is coming out. Cut Adrift is coming out in February. Number 3 will be out in 2024. I suspect that may well be the last one. I feel like I'll have wrapped the story there. And I don't want to carry on writing it just for the sake of writing it. I think it will dilute the dilute well.
And are you writing number 3 at the moment?
No, at the moment, I've got some ideas for number 3, but I've got another couple of books coming out this year. One in May, which is a psychological thriller that I can't talk about very much because I'm not quite sure how they're going to position it. And then in November, I've got another book, which is a standalone thriller coming out called A Quiet Contagion. And I'm just in the middle of editing both of those two, but they're completely standalone, completely different from, well, they're not completely different from Jen, but because they're crime fiction, crime thriller fiction too. The one in May is more psychological thriller. Anyway.
Okay. So. And what have you found to be your most favourite part of the publishing journey so far?
Oh God. The actual publishing, it's definitely talking to readers, real readers. I mean, I am absolutely sure other writers have said this to you before, and I'm sorry I can't come up with something more new, but honestly, there is nothing like the feeling when somebody who you have never met, who doesn't know you, reads your book and either speaks to you in a bookshop or at an event, or sends you an email or contacts you on Facebook. It's just fantastic, because you spend, like months, years sometimes, sitting there writing these books, thinking about what the reader will think, and then it's fantastic. Can't tell you.
And do you have a favorite place to write?
It slightly depends what I'm doing. If I'm actually writing a first draft or a second draft, if I'm at the stage where I'm still pulling it out of my head and getting it onto paper, then I have a really sort of strict routine. I have to get up in the morning, make myself a massive mug of tea. If the weather's like it is at the moment, wrap myself in blankets because it's absolutely freezing here. And then I'll just write until lunchtime, and I sit upstairs. I've got a little corner of the room, sort of slightly shut away from everybody else, and I'll just write until lunchtime. It's like I just have to pull it out of my brain before other things start to, before real life takes over. If I'm editing, it's slightly different. I'm not so bothered about where I am or what time of day it is. The only thing I will say is I'm very old-fashioned in this respect, I guess. But I have to edit on paper. I have to print it out, make notes, even sometimes cut bits up and rearrange them on the table. And also I use loads of Post-it notes and things like that. But that's probably just a sign of age. I mean, I love it than anything else.
And when you're first starting to write, what do you find comes first for you? Is it the plot, the characters, or the location?
It does vary.
Okay.
It does vary hugely. With On the Edge, it was definitely the character. Well, it was the lighthouse and then the character. And then I worked on the rest of the plots after that. With A Quiet Contagion, it was an idea that came first, and I worked on that, and then the character came, and the setting, obviously. But I can never start to write until I've got some idea of you're quite right, of all three of those. Definitely the character and setting, even if the plot idea comes first of all, it's in some ways less important to me than the character and the setting, because somehow the three are so interlinked anyway, but the character and the setting always end up dictating the story, which I'm sure you've had lots of other writers say this. You can get halfway through writing a story, and you think you know exactly how the plot is going to shape, and then suddenly, either a character will do something you're not something will happen and it will end up going in a completely different direction, which is a lot of fun. Although sometimes it's a bit nerve-wracking, especially if you're writing to a deadline.
Yeah. And when you start writing, do you know the ending when you start?
When I start writing, I think I know the end. It is the one. Okay, when I write a first draft, I will just write. I start at the beginning and I write. I don't go back and tidy up. But I quite often will stop just before the very end.
Okay.
And then go back and write the second draft. And so, although I'm pretty sure I know what the end is, I often don't write it for the first time until after the second draft. And it is often the thing that is most likely to change.
Okay.
During the editing process. I think because it's all about tying everything up. So if you change anything, it has a repercussion further along.
And Kelly wonders what the best part for you of being an author is.
It's writing.
Yeah.
It is. It's writing. It's really hard to explain. Well, it's probably no. I'm just not very good at explaining. But everything about it. As a child, I spent a lot of time daydreaming, and in a way, writing is sort of authorized, allowed daydreaming. So I love that part of it. I love words. I love playing with words. I love plotting. I love suddenly having that idea that links back to something else and adds an extra layer to the plot. I loved it, as I said before. I love doing the research. So there's just, I enjoy all of it. Apart from trying to work out where I should put my commas. When you read one of my books, honestly, every word in it is obviously mine, but the comma placement is has been done by somebody else.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for chatting with me. It's been great talking to you. Do you want to share with people how they can keep in touch with you?
Yes, I'd love to. But I'd also love to, if it's all right, just say to everybody that with Cut Adrift, which is coming out in ebook on the 3rd of February, as part of the launch of, as part of the promotion for the launch of that, for the next couple of weeks, if you sign up to my newsletter, the publisher will send you a link for a free ebook download of On the Edge.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and that's available internationally. It's not just UK based. But basically, if you want to get in touch with me, my website, which is where you can also sign up for my newsletter, is jane-jesmond.com. Otherwise, I'm on Twitter I think I'm author Jane Jesmond, and I've also got a Facebook page. But basically, one of the advantages, if you Google me, you'll find all that information. Maybe I could share it in the club afterwards.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, and I look forward to reading more of your books, and thank you for those who joined in with some questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was lovely. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Have
Bye,
a lovely
everyone.
Hello, bye.
Bye.